Hi, it's Barry Rancho La Puerta, and today I'm talking to John Jacobs, who's a psychiatrist, and he's here doing some presentations for our guests. Welcome, John.
No, thank you. It's been great.
Yeah, and tell us what you're talking to our guests about this week.
What my presentations were about was how difficult it is to stay married happily and comfortably in the 21st century. It's all about how the historical and cultural changes that have taken place in the West, and especially in the United States, have made it kind of dissolve the glue that have held marriages together for centuries.
Right.
And how important it is to recognize that, and what we can do to create a kind of a new glue, which has got to do with new skills that are required to keep couples together today in this new world.
Wow. And you think it's possible?
Yes, I do think it's possible, but I think that people who don't know what they're up against, how these changes have affected marriage, and how easily, when you get disappointed in marriage, it has become so easy to fall apart that people are unaware of the dangers these days.
So your goal is awareness.
Awareness
is
is number
step.
one,
Yeah.
and then learning the skills that are now required, like never before in the history of marriage. Because we're really in a new era of marriage, and this new era requires new skills to help us stay together and be happy. That every relationship eventually experiences disappointment. You know, the nature of falling in love is that we're so blinded by the kind of anesthetic of it that we don't realize that eventually that anesthesia is going to wear off, and we're going to recognize who that real person is we've fallen in love with, and they're not going to be perfect, and they're not the person in the mirror, they're not going to agree with us about everything. And eventually, we're going to start to experience some disappointment in every relationship, and that becomes the moment of truth. Do we have the skills then to work this relationship through with a real human being, so that we can become a loving couple, or can we not handle it because either we've married the wrong person or we're in the wrong kind of relationship, or because we don't have the skills to do it, and then we fall apart.
Is there things people can do prior to marriage? Or not really?
Well, clearly there are a number of things you could do. One thing is, of course, try and take the blinders off before you get married. If you get married very, very quickly with the blinders on, then your risk is very, very great, because you're marrying a kind of a myth of a human being, an image of a human being, a dream of a human being, not a real human being. And that's potentially dangerous. And there are a lot of people these days, because our divorce rate is so high, who are actually exploring with a therapist or with a priest or with a minister or a rabbi their relationships to see if they are overlooking things or not dealing with things that they should deal with beforehand. And I think the biggest issue to remember before you get married is, if you think it's bothering you now, it will actually bother you worse later on, rather than what people tend to think, which is, I think this is bothering me now, but after I'm married it's going to go away, it's not going to be a problem. Yeah. That's kind of the road to ruin.
Right, and I hear that too, and I think some people have kids thinking it will solve problems too. And
actually having kids makes almost every marital problem worse.
Yeah. Because
kids take up a lot of your time, they're very, very stressful. Often when you have kids who have problems of their own. And actually, people who have children are at least in the first 10 or 12 years, in greater danger of falling apart. Every study of marital satisfaction suggests that marital satisfaction plummets after the birth of every new child.
Right. So, is there a couple skills you could actually throw at me right now that you?
That's
generic.
It's possible, because everybody asked me that question, so I've rehearsed it for years. Yeah.
Good.
Right. I think the first skill that is very, very useful is that almost every conflicted marital couple tells me that both spouses don't feel appreciated for what they do in their marriage. Almost everybody's working very, very hard, and they're they feel very unappreciated for what they do. In a traditional marriage, the men feel very unappreciated for going to work and how hard they work, and women feel unappreciated when they stay home and they raise children, and women feel unappreciated when they work and come home and still raise children and have to do everything around. So probably the first adjustment that anybody could make to improve their relationship would simply be to say thank you more often for every time somebody, your spouse does something nice, to recognize it and say, you know, I really appreciated your doing that. And then there are lots of things that have to do with communication that help too. People need to, I think one of the most useful things that couples can do, as an example, is to have more fun together. Not just go out and talk, which is nice, but to actually do things together. Couples that go and play golf together, couples that go to a movie together. My wife always says, I go to a movie with my husband once a week just to sit in the theater and hold his hands. Hand, not hands. Hand. As an example, playing tennis together, going for walks together, going to a show together, even sitting at your child's soccer game together and watching as a couple is a useful experience. But clearly, spouses need to spend more time alone together. That doesn't mean going out with all your friends to dinner. It means going out just the two of you and doing something like coming to Rancho La Puerta by yourself with your spouse alone.
Which is what you're doing this week.
Which is what I'm doing this week, and it's been one of the most glorious relationship vacations of our life.
Wonderful. Now, tell me about your book. I see you have.
The book is called All You Need Is Love and Other Lies About Marriage. It was published by Harper Collins, and basically it's an attempt to explain again why marriage is so vulnerable and what you can do about it. And it's divided into 7 sections that have to do with misunderstanding about marriages. So, for example, one misunderstanding might be that children solidify a marriage. That's really not true. There's almost no evidence for that. Another is that egalitarian marriage is easier than traditional marriage. That's not true either, because that requires tremendous negotiation. Another misunderstanding, one of the things I call lies about marriage, is that everybody believes that marital communication is fundamentally just saying what you think, telling the truth, even if it's the brutal truth. And that is actually not what we think of as therapists and as marriage educators about marital communication. Marital communication is a very, very scripted, delicate dance between two spouses who have decided to put their relationship above everything else. And even when they need to talk about something that they're upset about, have learned to do that in ways that do not create marital disruption.
Making it a priority.
Yeah, sure. The assumption is that in every marriage, 2 different people have to negotiate their relationship in a way that leaves them feeling closer together emotionally and physically, and not distance from each other.
Great. Well, thanks for being here.
That should be enough,
That's
right?
not, oh my God, yeah. A lot to work on for sure, for anyone. So thanks for talking, John.
It was great.
And check out the website if you want to see John. He might be back here.